Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Healthy Discipline podcast. Still trying to get used to the name. So you're here with me and Mikey. So me being Daniel, Mikey being Mikey, obviously. And I have a quote from something that will introduce us into the topic of our podcast episode today. So if you'd like to hear it, so here it goes. Scientists have discovered a revolutionary new treatment that makes you live longer. It enhances your memory and makes you more creative. It makes you look more attractive. It keeps you slim and lowers food cravings. It protects you from cancer and dementia. It wards off colds and flu. It lowers your risk of heart attacks and stroke, not to mention diabetes. You'll feel happier, less depressed, less anxious. Are you interested?
Yes. What is it?
It is sleep.
Wow.
Yeah. So our topic
Guess I'm out.
today. That's pretty much all of those are down for you, except for all the physical ones. That comes later. You know, the
Yeah.
actual like dementia and cancer.
Mhm.
Not to make jokes of those things, those are very serious. But our topic today is sleep. We thought it would be a good topic to have because I've been struggling sleeping recently, and Mikey's been struggling sleeping since as long as I've known him.
Yeah. Longer, actually.
Yes.
Sleep's a funny one. Because every single person you talk to has a different sleep experience. Like, there's very few times you'll talk to 2 or 3 people that are like, "Oh yeah, me too."
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
it seems a lot of the time to me to be one way or the other. Either you struggle to sleep and therefore you sleep a lot less, or whoops, punch my mic. As soon as you go to bed, your head hits the pillow and you're just out.
yeah. And which category are you in?
I don't sleep. Well,
So you're the struggle to sleep less type.
I struggle to sleep, but I guess I kind of flip flop. I don't know, because whenever I'm sleeping, what way? Whenever I can get to sleep at night, I tend to sleep like a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can easily sleep 10 hours.
Yeah.
But I'm either like 10 hours 7 days a week, or I'm like 3-4 hours 7 days a week.
Yeah. So your body probably builds up this huge amount of sleep debt, and then it decides for you that you're hibernating.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
There was one time I slept through 2 full days and then woke up. Whenever I was a kid, to be fair, I was sick.
Yeah, I think it's easier when you're sick.
Yeah, I woke up and then I was like, "Where is everyone? No one's in the house." I was like 8 years old. I was like, "Mom, where is everyone? It's like 10 o'clock. We should be getting ready to go to mass." And she was like, "Mass? It's Monday." And I'm like, "What?" It was Saturday afternoon whenever I went to sleep. What the? I time traveled.
Yeah. Well, I sleep better than that. I've always been a good sleeper. Well, I say I've always been. There was a period of time where I was pretty bad at sleeping. But typically, since I was a kid, I'd always wake up at like 5 a.m. And even now, if I fall asleep early enough, I'm up at 5:30, between 5:30, 6:30.
Yeah.
And I normally get about 7.5 to 8 hours sleep as a typical rule. But that's because I aim for it. And I've been doing that for years now, so my body has adapted to it quite easily. I do struggle to get to sleep sometimes, though, but we'll talk, have a conversation as to why that might happen, why you may struggle to fall asleep to begin with and have good quality sleep later on down the line.
Yeah. That's, I think, more than anything, regardless of your length of sleep, quality of sleep is the defining factor. Because you could sleep great for an hour, right? Or 2 hours.
Mm.
And you could wake up and be like, I don't feel too bad. You could sleep the recommended 6 to 8 hours and get up and go, I feel like trash.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quality of
It's
sleep.
funny though. I think they need to stop calling that recommended. It's like, no,
you
you should do it. Like anything under 7 hours isn't good for you.
Yeah.
Like you get a lot of health issues that start to creep in at that point. If you have like chronically lower levels, there is an exception. There's I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's less than a single percent. of the population that have a special gene that allows them to sleep for 6 hours at a time and then be fully refreshed. But that's incredibly rare. Most people aren't like that.
I wonder if I have it.
No,
I tend to perform better on like less sleep actually, not like no sleep, but
no, but that's the thing. People that are
4 to
chronic
6 hours.
undersleepers, they don't have like they think that they've had enough sleep when they really haven't. Like there's a lot of like it. Your subjective opinion of it
Yeah,
could be wrong
yeah,
because you're unaware of it.
yeah,
I would say you're an undersleeper. After living with you for a while.
yeah. Uh, I go from undersleeper to massive oversleeper.
Yeah, there's no in between, and it does mess you up a little bit. So there's something to say for consistency
Yeah.
in your sleep. I think sleep is incredibly important. Most, like if you go back to the intro about how it enhances memory and creativity and helps with your look. Like they did tests on people where they sleep deprived them.
Hmm.
And so they got a group of people, took photos of them when they were well rested, and took photos of them when they were sleep deprived. And they got people to rate them objectively, or sorry, uh, rate them based on their looks, subjective, each person's own subjective opinion on how they felt that they look, and all of the people, all of the under uh, slept photos were deemed to be the least attractive because they looked unwell, they looked clearly tired,
Yeah.
they weren't as well kept, they didn't look as bright and energetic, and so they were unattractive
Hmm.
in that sense.
I mean, I would assume after X amount of time, lack of sleep probably. So obviously, it's going to change your skin, right? Because you're going to get, but you can probably see a little bit there. A little bit of darkness here. You know,
Hmm.
it's going to affect. It's going to give you big circles around your eyes and all kinds of things. But assumedly, it probably actually changes more than that. Like it probably goes deeper than just your skin.
Oh yeah, it goes way deeper than your skin. Like
Yeah.
it affects your brain performance. It affects
I mean, just purely in terms of physical appearance.
yeah. Well, again, muscle recovery, that's a huge thing. Any kind of recovery, even from an injury, you're less likely to heal better because your body's not shutting down to perform those recycling functions or repair functions.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So whenever I was a kid, I slept. You know the way you were saying you sleep from like 10 a.m. to like 5 or half 5, 6 a.m. every day.
10 a.m. to
Sorry,
6.
10
That's
p.m.
pretty.
Sorry, I need some sleep. Uh, from 10 p.m. to like 6
Six.
a.m. every day. Yeah.
I try to.
Yeah, which is 8 hours.
Yeah, I would say I fall asleep more close to half 10, but so that would make it about 7.5. But it just depends.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
whenever I was a kid, I was the same. I was awake at 5 a.m. every day without fail. Obviously, no alarm clock or anything as a
Hmm.
kid. Right up until I was about 13. And I always wondered because I have vivid memories of waking up in the winter and going out and playing in the snow before school starts, like
Hmm.
having full on snowball fights and stuff. And I'm like, how on earth could I have got up, got changed, had a full on snowball fight, everything went in, got my breakfast, got washed and dressed, and then went to school?
Hmm.
Like, that's like half a day.
Yeah.
Realistically, it was. I was waking up 4 hours before school starts.
Yeah, I'd always wake up well before school starts.
Yeah,
Well, 3 hours, like 5 or 6. So about, yeah, four,
yeah,
4 to 3 hours.
yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine now going to work in the morning and being awake for 4 hours already. I wouldn't know what to do.
Hmm.
I'd probably come on and play games and then end up late because I'm like, oh crap.
Well, I was thinking we could sort of talk about how these kind of things relate to the main focus of our channel, which is health and fitness.
Yeah,
Um, so I, there was a thing I was going to ask, and then I got derailed by your little story.
yeah, that's right.
Uh, what was it? You can tell that I've been underslept recently. Like I can't focus very well.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I've gotten my interest back into sleep. Uh, so when it comes to well, which aspect of health should we touch on?
I mean, sleep affects every aspect, right? It affects your training, it affects your recovery, even healing from cuts and all different things.
Yeah, so if we even compare it to like our conversations on diet and how what you eat affects all these different processes in the body, sleep actually does pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
And it's hard to say which one's more important than the other because they're both just as important. One, like your your diet determines which building blocks you have in your system, and then your sleep, helps start that process and allocates this, the time in order to repair. And so if you're doing a heavy, I can't even think. Jeez, this is what sleep deprivation does. Can't even
Sorry,
get my thoughts straight.
I blame myself. I completely broke your train of thought.
Yeah, I was thinking about it all day too. What we were going to talk about today.
Yeah,
That could have been it as well. I'm overthinking stuff.
yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah, you say something and I'll riff off it.
so even in terms of your mental health, obviously lack of sleep can be a huge detriment. Like if you're suffering, from depression or anxiety or any of these things, if you're undersleeping, that's just going to um okay, I was going to use a word that just wouldn't fit the situation. It's going to make the situation more extreme.
Yeah.
It's just going to elevate your position
Yes.
in your mental space.
Yes. Okay. So that is actually something I did want to talk about as well, about the mental health side of things. So if you are, like depressive, bipolar, all these other kind of things, studies suggest that by sleeping more, you actually help that. And the reason for that is that dreams play an important role in emotional regulation. So part of the purpose of dreams is to help you figure out how you feel about stuff. So if you think about a traumatic time in your life that was quite emotionally strong for you, and you think back and you don't have that same sort of feeling that you had before, you understand that it was a bad thing, but you've dealt with it now and you're feeling relaxed and comfortable. There are a certain set of people which have post-traumatic stress disorder where they don't actually have that. Every time they think back on that time because it was unresolved, it keeps coming back vividly, and they feel the exact same way that they felt before.
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't come to terms exactly with how they felt emotionally with the situation. Dreaming helps sort that out. Now, there are other factors that come into play when it comes to that. So as you're sleeping, you have two different types. You have REM sleep and NREM sleep. So, REM sleep.
Yep.
So that's rapid eye movement. And then you have non-rapid eye movement sleep. And then these two different types or modes of sleeping do two different things. But the REM sleep one is the one specifically that help you deal with your emotional, it's like problem solving and emotional trauma and stuff or not even, it doesn't even necessarily need to be trauma, but just how you feel about things, because that's what the dreams sort of do for you. So, in that state, in the NREM state, your brain shuts off its ability to utilize adrenaline and noradrenaline, which is your stress hormone. But that's sort of deactivated in people with PTSD. So even while they're dreaming, they'll start getting anxiety spikes of adrenaline, noradrenaline, and start to freak out again. So some treatment things they have reduce it or blocks the noradrenaline in their sleep so they can have a good night's sleep, and then the brain helps them resolve the issues. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that, but on a small scale, when you're looking at for your own personal, development, it's important. That's why they say when you sleep things off, you'll tend to feel better in the morning. You want to go to bed. If you go to bed feeling a particular way, if you're angry, don't say anything to the person until you've slept on it, because by the time you wake up, you would have resolved it in your own mind, and you won't feel as angry about it. Typically,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you been? I won't say about people or anything, but how many times have you been playing a game and you've just been like so angry, you're like, I'm deleting this, and then you're like, this is pointless, and you go to bed and you wake up and you're like, okay, yeah, well, let's play the game again.
Yeah, and then you can magically do it. It was really frustrating you before you went to bed, because I've had this in a few video games that I played where I'm really angry and you keep dying at the same spot and you don't understand because you know what's happening, and then you go to sleep, do it in the morning, and you do it first try without any issue, and you're like, the hell just happened? But that's also because sleeping helps you consolidate what you've learned. So your brain maps out the problem that you have, goes through it, and as you sleep, and then by the time you get up in the morning, you figured it out
Yeah.
in your mind. So you're actually consolidating what you've been doing, and then be able to properly.
Yeah, your brain subconsciously flushes it out, and
Figures it out, yeah. So that's
yeah,
the same thing we're talking about in the intro as well about creativity. So if you're having a problem that needs a creative touch, sometimes sleeping on it is better because your brain has more, because your subconscious has more time to, or has the free reign to just tick over things that were going on in your mind and your conscious mind that you couldn't figure out consciously.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I so obviously I knew about the effects of mental illness and sleep, but I didn't know about the REM sleep and did you say in REM?
So non
N?
rapid eye movement. Yeah.
Oh,
So that's
just
when your eyes
N.
are fine. There's two different types of
Yeah.
waves. I'm
REM.
still learning about it, so I can't explain it fully which
Yeah.
parts do the best thing, but there are two parts of it. I'm going to keep learning about it, and then we may have other discussions about sleep in the future.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know about that. I knew about REM sleep, but I didn't know about NREM.
Yeah, and they go through in cycles as well. So there's actually you'll have a bout of NREM and then REM and then NREM and REM, and you cycle between those. It depends on the person how long these cycles last, and also depends on your age because your REM sleep I think goes down. I think the quality of it
Yeah.
as you age, and you need certain amounts of each at different life stages.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but they're both important. They have very specific functions.
Yeah.
And it's also important not to cut your sleep short as well, because it's some of the later cycles that are the most important for memory consolidation and problem solving.
Yeah. Well, um, as I've said before, I'm not a particularly intelligent person. I'm average intelligence, mostly self-taught. So possibly that's what the reason why I always miss my alarms and sleep in is because of the later cycle of REM sleep.
No, well, we can get on
My
to
my my,
circadian rhythm as well, actually.
my mind's like, bro, we've almost got this problem sorted. Just give us a few minutes.
Well, I just think you have a different sleep pattern or sleep cycle than I do,
Yeah.
and other people. So you have three different types of sleepers. So you have your stereotypical night owl and morning lark. If we were to put a label on me and you, I would be a morning lark and you'd probably be a night owl. And then you have this one category that's in between.
Is it
Interestingly
also
enough,
a bird?
no, they don't. It hasn't been described. It's just that in between one. The thing that I thought was interesting is apparently 40% of people are morning people,
Hmm.
morning larks, 30% are night owls, and then the other 30 are just in between.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. I wasn't sure that the majority of people would be morning people, but then that just shows that most people nowadays are chronic undersleepers. They just don't sleep enough because
Yeah.
everybody goes to bed late, and that's thanks to technology and blue light and all that other kind of stuff. So you don't actually feel tired. Like midnight used to be the middle of the night, and now midnight is bedtime
Yeah.
for a lot of people. And that people just don't go to sleep until 12
Yeah. Well,
because
that's the thing. Like people say to me, "Oh, I was in bed at 9 o'clock last night," and I'm like, "What? Like the middle of the day? What are you going to bed at 9 o'clock for?"
yeah,
Part of it is like you say, it's technology, it's blue light, it's artificial light,
hmm
electricity. You
yeah,
know, if you go back a couple of 100 years, we went to bed at like in the winter time, we would have been going to bed at 6 o'clock because there's no light, you can't do anything,
yeah, exactly.
and we would have been in bed. Well, in this country, in Ireland, I mean, like at the height of the winter, the sun's down by 3 o'clock, half three.
hmm
So here they would have been coming in at 3 o'clock to get their dinner, and they just would have been going to bed, and they wouldn't have been back up. There was no light to do anything until what
Well, you sit
six?
by the fire and do some family stuff and more
Yeah,
activities that way. But the fire is different. There's no blue light coming off that one, so you're
yeah.
not waking up.
Well, fire. I did actually read a thing a couple of years ago about fire and sleep, and it's something I can't remember what it was. Well, one, heat, obviously heat, like fire heat helps people to sleep.
Hmm.
I'm not sure why. It might just be a genetic thing that we've been by the fire for so many years. You know, people have just evolved that way. I don't know.
Oh, well,
Um,
humanity, I think we've co-evolved with fire.
yeah, it's probably a comfort thing.
Hmm.
But there was something else, and I can't remember what it was. It might just be that it's like mesmerizing, almost relaxing, just watching the flames.
Yeah, the nice low glow of it, could help.
Um,
I'm not entirely sure. I don't know what you're
yeah,
referencing, but
yeah. It was just a thing I'd read about fire and sleep and the effects, and there's like a common link between fire and sleep.
mhm.
Um, but I mean I don't know enough about it to really say anything about it.
Me
Um,
either.
yeah. I just thought it was interesting whenever I read it. I was like, well, yeah, actually, the amount of times I've fallen asleep in front of the fire.
Yeah, I
My
don't
mum
think I've
says,
ever fallen asleep in front of a fire. Not that that I'm opposed to it. Just
yeah,
any place that I've ever had a fire wouldn't be a comfortable place to fall asleep.
yeah. Well, it's dangerous as well because I mean, if the fire's too warm, you can very quickly become extremely toasty, get burnt,
Yes.
heat
What
burn.
were we talking about? Was it a circadian rhythm?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yes.
there's some evolutionary reasons for why people might be in these two different categories of night owl and morning lark, and that's sort of in between. And it's like you were talking about with fire. It could be like an evolutionary thing where instead of having everybody asleep for 8 hours at a time and everybody vulnerable for 8 hours, there's some overlap. So you're only vulnerable for about 4 hours of the night rather than the entire 8 hours, which
Yeah.
I thought was kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Um, this is a bit harder to talk about than I expected.
Hmm.
So we'll talk about strategies for you and how we can help because I don't want you to get dementia.
It's on its way anyway. Don't worry.
Yeah, well, you're
Has been for
accelerating.
years.
Well, it accelerates it by not having sleep. There was who are the two famous world leaders, Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, infamously said that they could get by on 4 hours of sleep.
Reagan.
And if you remember what I said earlier, I was saying that there's a very specific gene that allows you to sleep for about 6 hours and not have any ill effects, and
Hmm.
that's very rare. None of them is for 4 hours. Human beings need to sleep for more than that.
Yeah.
Um, two interesting things about the 4 hour thing. For one, both of those world leaders ended up with dementia,
Hmm.
Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
because when you don't sleep, you build up a sticky protein called beta amyloid
Hmm.
in your brain, and that actually corrodes a part of your brain, and it's not so good. So when you go to sleep, that flushes out of your brain through the lymphatic system, and then it helps prevent any kind of degenerative brain disease like that. But the other interesting thing about 4 hours as well, something you may not have known, 4 hours of sleep. If you sleep only 4 hours a night, that's the same as being drunk in
Hmm.
terms of doing anything like
Yeah.
driving or
Yeah.
yeah.
Just
So your cognitive ability,
functionality.
yeah, your cognitive ability is about the same as if you were drunk,
Hmm.
and it's potentially more deadly than if you were being drunk because at least when you're drunk, your reactions are just slower. When you're sleep deprived, your reactions don't exist. So if you were driving down a street at like or the motorway faster than you should, and there's a car, you kind of don't realize the car's there and you're still barreling on towards it. A drunk person would go, oh crap, hit the brakes as they hit the car. So at least you'd have that slowing down after the impact. But a sleep deprived person would just plow into the car and not even realize at full force. So it's largely more dangerous.
Yeah.
Plus, it's got a compounding effect. So if you're tired and drunk, it doesn't just add; it multiplies how dangerous it is. So
Yeah. Which generally people who, well, I mean, uh, alcohol makes people sleepy, right?
Oh yeah, that's another thing we need to talk about.
Generally,
Caffeine and
so
alcohol. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean,
Okay.
if you're
It's
talking
coming
about
back to me.
if someone's drunk, generally they're tired. Like, I mean, you don't really go out. You've never really been one for going out and stuff.
Yeah, I just don't enjoy it. Well, I do kind of, but not my thing.
But any time you have been out, how many times have you seen people just being like, "Yeah, I'm done. They're just passing out randomly,
Yeah.
like at house parties or anything." I know you, like I said, you don't go out much, and I don't believe you've been to that many house parties or anything.
No, I've only blacked out twice.
Yeah.
That was weird. Didn't mean to.
Well, I just mean people
Only
that just
birthday
they're
party.
drinking and then they just fall asleep.
Yeah.
I've blacked out a few times.
Well, there's the thing that I wanted to say about it, alcohol consumption and sleep as well. A lot of people think, "Oh, I need to have just a little nightcap help me go to sleep, and a little bit of alcohol
Hmm.
that'll help me get to sleep." But that actually ruins sleep quality. So,
Yeah.
same thing with sleeping pills. A lot of people say, "I can't get to sleep, so I need to get some sleeping pills." But what those things are, they're sedatives,
Hmm.
and they shut down brain function. So it's not like you're sleeping; you're literally just or you're unconscious
Yeah.
as such.
So
So
your
your
body's
brain doesn't.
actually,
Hmm?
presumably, your body's actually your mind's kind of like fighting to get awake then,
No,
rather
it's
than
it's like
resting.
being under anesthetic. It just shuts it off. There's
Oh,
nothing it can do, so it turns off the processes.
yeah.
So you don't get any of that recovery
Blue screen.
that you get when you're asleep.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing about caffeine, you have something called a sleep pressure. So you have adenosine, a chemical called adenosine. Might remember from the adenosine triphosphate for your energy systems, but there's this is slightly separate, where you get this gradual accumulation of adenosine, and that's what's known as sleep pressure, or
Hmm.
that gives you something known as sleep pressure. So the more that builds up, the more likely you are to just kind of go and keel over and fall asleep. So the longer you stay awake, the more of that you build up. And caffeine, the reason caffeine makes you feel less tired is because caffeine competes for the same receptors as that adenosine.
Hmm.
So it blocks off all of those receptors. You're
Hmm.
still building up the adenosine. So once the caffeine wears off, you have this horrible crash. So it's not like it's stopping you from being tired as such. It's
It's
just
just pausing the feeling.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
all you
interesting.
caffeine addicts out there, coffee doesn't give you energy. It just makes you feel like you're not sleepy. That's the only difference. Like it doesn't
But
make
that
you any more awake or alert.
But then there's also the mental aspect as well, where people are like, "Wow, I need a coffee. I'm really tired."
Yeah, but that's the drug dependency side of it. Like there's very, very little benefit to having caffeine.
Yeah. So I
Like people think of it as a performance enhancing drug, and it can be to some extent, but it's more of a neurological drug that you should probably avoid, especially if you're in the developing age group.
yeah. Well,
People
I
just keep giving their kids tea and Coke and all these other things, and it's not really good for them mentally.
whenever I was a kid, I wasn't allowed any fizzy drinks, but
Hmm.
particularly things like Coke. I always find a way to get them,
Yeah,
but
but I'm sure you were allowed to have tea.
no, I wasn't.
Oh, that's
No,
impressive.
not
Most
till I
people could
was
have some
not
tea.
till I was a teenager. I mean, we didn't really like it anyway. Me and my
Yeah,
brother
no,
and
I knew that.
sister.
I still don't really like it. I'll drink it politely, but
Yeah.
if
Well,
it's already made, if somebody asks me, I'll just say no.
my brother and sister drink a lot of tea and coffee now.
Hmm.
Or I wouldn't even say a lot, probably just like a normal amount for most people. I think
Yeah,
my
but is normal amount for most people good for you?
is too much. Yeah, I think my brother maybe has 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day.
Oh, that's way too much.
Um, and my mom and dad would probably have like, I don't know, 4 or 5 cups of tea a day.
Hmm. No, that's a lot. And our good friend Liam, when you're watching this, you drink too much tea. Uh, you drink.
Steve, when you're watching this, you drink way too much tea.
Hmm. It's not good for you. Like if you constantly have to rely on stimulants to keep you awake, there's a problem. You need to detox yourself off of those. Just cold turkey for a couple of weeks
Yeah,
to get a few headaches, but just like it's
yeah.
nice having it every now and again, but realize that it's not doing you any favor having it. But people keep saying, "I can't live without my coffee. I can't live without my tea."
Have you seen the meme that's going around at the minute? It's picked up traction again.
No.
It says coworker, "Oh, you can't work on 5 hours sleep. You've got a 12-hour shift to do." And then it's like a guy sitting with a tin of Monster, and he's like, "Oh yeah, watch me." Like this kind of Monster. And
Yeah.
I keep seeing it and be like, 5 hours, weaklings.
Yeah. I get
Um,
passed out straight away.
yeah, but
I
there's
used
ones
to
that are like, you can't work a 12-hour shift on 6 hours sleep. What? It's like a full night. What are you talking about?
You could. It's just again not enough sleep. Like over the time, it'll become harder. Here's an
Yeah.
interesting one for you. What is it? For every hour of sleep that you miss, you need a full day to help you recover from it. So if you don't sleep for 8 hours, you need 8 days to catch that back up.
Well, I guess I'm doing a lot of catching up then.
Yeah, that's probably why whenever you're doing your only 3 or 4 hours sleep, and then you have those 10-hour stints, that's your
Yeah.
body desperately trying to catch up.
Yeah. Well, like whenever you messaged me yesterday about covering this topic, I was like, "You dare mock me? Do you know who I am? I am the sleepless wonder."
Yeah, taking away part of
um,
your identity.
so, uh, and just to clarify on that, so, what day is today? Wednesday. So on Monday, I went to bed. Now I did go quite late. It was like 4 a.m. or maybe later. But I went to bed and I lay there for, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours. And I was like, okay, I'm still wide awake. So I put on a movie, which most people tell you is generally, it's actually a horrible idea.
Yeah, blue light and all that.
Yeah, some people need the background noise, and I've found I kind of need the background noise now. And by the way, I
Mhm.
never used to put movies on in bed and stuff until we
I
moved
used to.
into, yeah. It was, you kind of got me started on it, and now I kind of need background noise. Um, so I watched a movie and I was like, yeah, I'm still awake. So I put on another movie, and I was like, it's like 9 o'clock or half nine or something. I was like, just getting up. There's no point. So I was awake for about 50 hours probably. Wait,
25, I thought you said.
at that point, yes.
Okay.
That was yesterday morning.
No, you're getting into horribly dangerous territory when it comes
Sorry,
to.
no, wait. No, it wouldn't have been 48. That's 2 days. It was it was over 30 anyway, for sure.
Mhm.
Probably more like 40.
That's crazy. That's way too long. Like every now and again, it's fine, sort of. It won't do any permanent damage, but you have a history of not sleeping well.
Yeah.
Need to figure out why.
Yeah.
Brain's too active, or you're trying to hide from something.
I don't
Your
know.
own emotions.
What emotions? Uh like I said, whenever I was a kid, I was at a time that I would just be out like a light, and then 5 a.m. without fail, awake.
Well, this could go back to our last
I
topic of habits and routine setting and things like that. You need to try to maybe figure out a way to form a routine around your sleep to help encourage it. And one of the strategies is you obviously don't go to bed and browse your phone, because then it turns bedtime into phone time,
Yeah.
um, in your mind, and you need to associate it with sleep. So anytime, if you're not sleepy, just get away from your bed. And when you start to feel sleepy again, go back, and then your brain starts to associate bed with sleep.
Yeah. Um I, I to be honest, I've thought about it a few times. I mean, not that often really. But I kind of chalked it up to hormones because, around the age of 13, and then all of a sudden not being able to sleep and not being able to wake up.
See, that's actually a real thing. When I was talking about circadian rhythm and about sleep cycles and things like that, when they
Looked
did
it
experiments
around.
on people, on or to see how long the human circadian clock would run. So the circadian is something to do with the cycle of the Earth rotation. So that's 24-hour period.
Hmm.
So everyone has their own natural inbuilt circadian rhythm that is their uh, independent of the sun. So obviously the sun helps to regulate the circadian rhythm, but if you're absent of the sun, you still have this cycle that your body works off. Plants have the same thing, and other animals have the same thing.
Hmm.
And they did the study experiment. Two professors went into this cave for a few weeks, and then they recorded, or they did experiments on themselves, and then it turns out that the human adult circadian rhythm is just slightly more than 24 hours, about 25 hours, maybe something like that. And then, but the sun helps to reset that.
Yeah.
So every day when you get sun exposure, you get reset and then brought back to the normal circadian rhythm.
Hmm.
When you're an infant, so a baby up to a particular age, you have a shorter window than 24 hours, and they require more sleep, so that their cycle goes in and out. But then once you hit adolescence, you actually, it switches to more than an adult. So end up going to bed later
Hmm.
because you're not actually tired. Your rhythm has changed, and then you sleep for longer as a result.
Hmm.
And a lot of people associate that with teenagers just being lazy, but they actually run off of a different time than
Hmm.
adults do. And that's probably what happened to you. Where
And then it's stuck.
yeah, and you haven't worked your way out of it. Whereas generally people tend to even out around back to the way it should normally be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've tried to work my way out of it. There was, whenever I was working in the shop, there was a period of about a month where it was all 6 a.m. starts,
Hmm.
and I didn't, like, every night. Obviously the first few nights, kind of going to bed an hour or two earlier than I would before, and end up getting 2-3 hours sleep before going to work,
Hmm.
and then towards the end of the week, getting to the fifth shift or whatever, fourth, fifth shift, then I'm going to bed earlier again, like an hour earlier than what was 2 hours, so 3-4 hours earlier than I started. But I still only ended up getting, like, I was going to bed at maybe 9-10 o'clock, and I still was only getting like maybe 4 hours sleep before 6 a.m. And that was over the course of 3 weeks to 4 weeks,
Hmm.
which you would think would be enough time to try and bring that pattern back. But the earliest I was really sleeping was 12 o'clock,
Yeah.
you know. So,
Yeah, but you were saying before that the shift patterns is kind of what messed you up. So you were working
yeah.
early one day, and then next you'd be working a night shift, and then just screwed around your pattern.
Yeah. Well, this was like a straight 3-4 weeks of just 6 a.m. starts. So it was, I knew every time. Before that, what would happen was I so I finished at 11 o'clock most of the time, right?
Uh huh.
And there's a period where the shop would close at 11, and we weren't getting out till 12 o'clock every night.
Yeah.
We were getting kept behind to finish things, not paid for it, mind you. Still
Hmm.
pissed at that. I'll never let it go. Uh, taking my money. It's not a good thing to do whenever your sole purpose to be there is to earn money.
Oh, it's even worse. It's not like they're taking your money; they're taking your time for no compensation.
Exactly. You can't get that back. You can get money back. You can't get your time.
Hmm.
Um, so, uh, I said something to someone not that long ago, and they're like, "Who said that?" And I was like, "Me." And it was uh, something along, I can't remember exactly, but it was something along the lines of, "Time is the greatest currency that we have because you can only spend it, you can't earn it."
Yeah.
Um, Confucius 2.0. Uh, yeah, but yeah. So
Very wise. Very wise.
yeah, I know. I need to get like a wizard hat. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I would be in till 12 o'clock, or sometimes slightly later. But the more this went on, the longer it was taking me to get to sleep after. So basically, after doing several months of never working during the day, never having to be up before midday, never having to be up before 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
Hmm.
I was getting home, and I go, well, I'll maybe play some games for a few hours. I was playing some games, getting into bed. Like, I wasn't getting to sleep till 9 a.m. And then
Yeah.
I was getting up at 2, 3 p.m., whatever, and going to work.
Hmm.
Uh, and then they started giving me day shifts, and I'm like, well, I don't really have a choice. I just have to stay awake.
Yeah.
because I've been on nights or evenings so long that I haven't like. And there was always this pattern where I would get day shifts and it would um I would struggle to sleep, and then they'd put me back on nights exclusively, evenings exclusively. And then every time it was evenings exclusively, like shift one, it's here, and then shift two it goes to here, shift three it goes to here. The time of awakeness after the shift finishes just extended every
Yeah.
time. So
Well,
I
now
might.
that you're no longer working for the shops, you should probably come up with strategies for you to actually start developing a pattern that you're happy with. I'm not saying you need to start going to bed at 10 o'clock like me, because good luck with that one. Uh,
The sun's
but
still up. Why am I sleeping?
yeah, but to have a consistent sleeping routine, I think it would be handy. Because again,
Yeah.
this is part of the reason we have the blog is so that we can
Yeah.
figure out.
Try and get goals for ourselves and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like sleeping is something that I've had down for a while now. There's other discussions that we can have about my personal sleep where I think,
That's like a real weird flex. It's like you want to talk about sleep, bro? I'm the best. Come get this.
yeah, but it's one of those things that should be a non-negotiable. Like I don't have an issue sleeping,
Mhm.
um, but my quality of sleep can be improved, and there are a lot of different strategies that we can talk about this. And just to go back on circadian rhythm, and the circadian rhythm is affected by sun and a whole variety of other things, including eating. So part of the things, if you want good quality sleep, you want to make sure you don't eat too late in the evening because then that has an effect or knock-on effect with your sleep,
Mhm.
because it convinces your body that no, we're still within waking hours.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole digestive process as well, where if you're digesting, you're not recovering because your digestive system is part of two systems in the body that uses the most energy. So, number one, your brain, and number two, your digestive system. Those are the most expensive parts of your body when it comes to energy expenditure. And if you're digesting as you sleep, you're not recovering, and
Yeah.
your brain, it's all of that effort's being taken away from the areas that need it.
Mhm.
So I thankfully don't eat too late in the evening anyway, so that helps me. But then there's the blue light exposure that we talked about before as well, and trying not to be too mentally active before you go to bed. However, there have been studies that show if you think about a problem that bothers you before you go to bed, it'll be in your mind as you sleep, and then your subconscious will help figure that one out. But
Yeah.
you don't want to be thinking of just real deep into thought and having these existential crises as you go to bed, because then you just start to freak yourself out and you won't be able to go to sleep anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but trying to come up with I think it'd be handy to try to come up with a routine for you.
Yeah. Well, I don't tend to eat before bed anyway. You know,
Yeah.
generally I'll have eaten a few hours before bed. Although I will say I'm quite partial to eating my dinner and then falling asleep straight after. Not on purpose, but like I'll eat my dinner and I'll watch something. Then as I'm watching it, I'm just
Yeah. Well, I guess there's the rest and digest phase. I'm not really sure exactly how
um,
this all works, but well, I think a good start for you anyway is maybe try to pick a time, because I think a good time for you would be 11 or 12, or
I'd say
somewhere between that.
I'd say probably midnight. I honestly, if if there was some way to look at the exact times I've fallen asleep at in the past 10 years, I would say less than 1% of that is before midnight. If you're
Mm,
talking about like as in your night sleep, not as in eating food and then passing out.
yeah. Well, naps can still help. Like even if you're sleeping for 6 hours, if you have like a power nap in the middle of the day, that helps.
Yeah, that's what they used to do. Back in the olden days. That's what they would have done was they would have had like especially in the summer.
Oh yeah, siestas if you're living in tropical areas where
Yeah,
it's too warm to be working or outside anyway,
yeah,
so you just go to sleep for a couple hours. They even in still a lot of places in Italy they still do that.
yeah. Even here, because I mean,
Interesting thing about that though, coronary heart disease and all these other kind of disorders in Italy and in Greece as well. They're notoriously quite low,
mhm,
um, and they practice the siestas. But what happened whenever they took away siestas, because they those countries had to adopt to modern times. Like
mhm,
America, business hours, work on these whatever
yeah,
time. So they didn't want to fall behind America and the UK and other developing nations. So they sort of started to gradually strip away that time.
Mhm.
And what they've noticed was coronary heart disease and stroke risk and everything, they went up because people were technically sleeping less because they weren't sleeping throughout the day, and they slept the same amount of hours that normally would at night,
Yeah.
just by restricting that power
Have,
nap
have they
in the
brought
middle
it
of the
back
day.
in?
No, there's still places in Italy that do that,
Yeah.
but in Greece, I don't know if they still do siestas. But it's
Uh,
really difficult. Like it's a modern problem
yeah.
nowadays with chronic undersleeping, because a lot of people say I'll sleep when I'm dead, but the ironic thing is, if
Hey,
you
you're
don't,
gonna be dead a lot sooner if you don't sleep.
yeah, by a factor of like 10 years or something ridiculous like
Yeah.
that.
I
Yeah.
have read studies. You know, like the way there's like these smoking studies, which is every cigarette you smoke cuts 2 minutes off your life or whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
I've read ones about sleep as well, which is like every hour you're deficient in sleep, you're cutting effectively a day off your life or whatever it is.
Oh, I don't know if it's a day, but you can recover from sleep deprivation. It's just if it's a constant thing and you spend years doing it, it ages you much faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
that's how it be sometimes.
yeah. Well, we have a time for you now. If you try to pick midnight, I don't know how quickly this will be actioned, but the more often you do this and the more often you try, it's just you're lucky because you don't. Most of your work is done in the evening anyway.
Yeah,
So give yourself, you can sleep as long as you want after that. If you try to go to bed around 12, what I would suggest is try to go to bed at about 11:30 and then try to sleep, and then you'll eventually fall asleep around 12. But once you sleep, try to give yourself 8 hours. Don't use an alarm to wake yourself up or anything like that. Just try to make it a natural thing. I don't normally need alarms to wake up,
yeah,
and it'll be a process. And we can talk about it in other future podcasts just to see how things go.
yeah. I'll be honest. I don't use alarms a whole lot either. Well,
Not
I mean,
anymore.
I guess I'm saying that because I haven't needed alarms in quite a while.
Hmm.
Um, so I do set an alarm because I have an Amazon Echo in my room.
Hmm.
Uh, don't worry, it's not picking up any conversations that it shouldn't be hearing or anything. There are no conversations in my room. I'm the only one that's ever in my room, so there's nothing for it to hear. Don't worry about
Yeah.
that. It's not spying on me. Uh, so it'd be more dangerous in the living room probably,
Yeah.
and I'm the only one that generally ever uses that too. So that's if I'm going to sleep, I'll just be like, Alexa, set an alarm for 10 a.m. or whatever it is. But generally, anytime I do that, I'm awake before it even goes off.
Yeah. I'm the same. Like I have an alarm, but I'm always awake before it, so I turn it off. It's
Yeah,
just if I oversleep for some reason, but it almost never happens.
yeah. Well, you know, with me, how bad I was at getting up for work or just
Hmm.
getting up in general.
Yeah.
Like anytime we were doing 6 a.m. workouts, and I'd have 15 alarms set and sleep through every single one of them.
Hmm. Well,
Whereas
hopefully we can fix that.
you're a contrast where your alarm goes off and you're like, hi.
No, there
not
was
not quite,
a
not
stage
quite.
where I did struggle to get up. It was a process. I was looking into sleep years and years and years ago, just because I had some issues that like depressive, not depression, but depressive like tendencies. And I figured that if I can get a good sleep routine sorted out, that might help me, and it actually did help me quite a bit.
Hmm.
Having a specific time, and then it was something that surprised my better half, which was whenever we first started talking to each other, she didn't go to sleep until like midnight, but I would always be like, yeah, I'm going to bed, as we're in the middle of texting, and sorry if I fall asleep, and then boom, about 10 o'clock I'd pass out because that was just my normal sleep time.
Hmm. Yeah. Unless it was a training day, then more like 11 o'clock. We weren't getting home till about 10.
Yeah. So training days 11 o'clock, non-training days 10 o'clock, but then I'd always wake up around 6 or 7.
Yeah. Well, that's so like you can see we're clearly polar opposites on this one.
Hmm.
You know.
Except for me recently, like I said, I'm quite tired today, and I did sleep an appropriate amount of time, but I would say the quality of my sleep hasn't been great.
Yeah.
I've had disturbed sleep where I woken up in the middle of the night for some reason. I'm trying to figure out what it is, but
Mhm.
both Anna and I are trying to figure out how to improve our sleep.
An
Good quality,
existential
have a
sense
good
of
quality
dread.
bed. Hmm?
An existential sense of dread.
Could be. I've been listening to a lot of what is it? Philosophy stuff, and
End of the world type stuff.
not even end of the world stuff. It's past atrocities and things, and it's really messing up my mind.
Yeah.
I listened to the Gulag Archipelago, the abridged version. It's it is. I It's the abridged version. It's only about the third of the size of the original 3 volumes,
Mhm.
I think, or something like 20%, and it is still so dark and sad. It talks about what happened in the Russian gulags during the, communist reign in Russia, or with Lenin and Stalin and all these other. It's just crazy,
Uh-huh.
and it is so depressing, and it took me I listened to the audiobook version of this, and it took me a week and a bit to listen to it. So for a week and a bit, I had nothing but this horrible, depressing stuff going through my mind, and it really makes you rethink things. And you're like, oh, and it changed my sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably made it worse because every night you're going to bed and you're imagining the faces of these people in the gulag.
it's not even that. It's not even that you have to imagine their faces. You can imagine yourself in those situations, and you think, how would I handle that any differently? And you probably wouldn't. And the horrible stuff. There's literally nothing you could have done.
Yeah.
Like, they arrested you for nothing.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just needed bodies to build, to work in their concentration camps and build, because that was what their main export was human labor. There was a slave trade essentially in Russia where they imprisoned people for no reason, just so they could use them as physical, human labor.
Yeah.
But they would let you freeze out in the winter, and people would just die while they're working, and they wouldn't care.
Mhm.
They shoot little kids. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Russia was and still is, to many extents, a very brutal place.
Hmm.
Very brutal.
Yeah, but it's a book I recommend. You just need to go in it with the right mindset.
Go at it at your own pace as well.
Yeah, don't try to binge it like I did. I just wanted to get through it, and then after that, I was listening to some psychological books about dreaming and all these other kind of thing, and then it's stuff about meaning and the soul and all these things, and it gets you thinking in a really abstract way. It's interesting, and I think it's good for you in the long run, but in the short term, everything's very dark and tragic. Um,
Isn't that the meaning of life?
yeah, life is tragedy. We
Tragedy.
can get into a
Yeah.
topic. We can get into that topic at some other point.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I'm trying to get out of that mindset right now. I'm trying to appreciate life.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, going through the tragedy of the stuff can help you appreciate what you do have, which is
Yeah.
nice. So I'm trying to shift myself back into appreciation out of that darkness spiral.
Well,
And
that's.
then,
We'll probably just finish on this because we're getting, I think, near time. But
yeah.
that's whenever people are like, so I'm not much. I was raised as a Catholic, but I'm not really much of a Christian. Like I'm not really practicing. I don't go to mass or anything.
Hmm.
Um, and I think you're atheist. No,
No.
no. I've never really heard you talk about it, so I kind of just um,
I was raised Baptist.
or I maybe you're kind of agnostic.
Mm. It's a difficult one. Like, not to steal a phrase, but from Jordan Peterson, but I sort of agree with his statement on it. I act as if I believe God is real.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I act as if there's some kind of accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Whether or not I believe in it doesn't matter, because you can get into whole arguments about that kind of stuff. But I act as if God is real, and I think that's a little bit more important.
yeah. So well, there's a whole thing where people are like, well, if God is real, then why is there plague? Why is there famine? Why is there disease? How could God let my husband get cancer and die?
Hmm.
It's like, well, I mean, the thing is, if there were none of these things, and I mean, if you think about it, if you were an omnipotent being and you
Hmm.
wanted your creation to worship you as such, you can't. They won't worship you if everything's good 100% of the time.
Yeah, I think it goes a
Yeah.
little deeper than that. We can get onto my thoughts and about this kind of stuff, but
No, that's just to talk about tragedy and all these different things happening. You know, I mean, There is
Well,
no
tragic
good.
things happen no matter what. You can't appreciate the good without the bad.
That's exactly what I was going to say. There is no good
Yeah.
without bad. It's just how
Yeah.
it is.
And the thing about it is, if you want to be a strong person, you need to have some kind of,
You have to have come through something.
yeah. And, and a lot of people nowadays, I think, are struggling with who they are and, trying to figure out who they are because they've never truly, really struggled. So they're trying to come up with a way to victimize themselves so that they can say that they had something to struggle against,
Yeah,
because it's these voluntary things that we struggle through that we adopt and then try to carry these kind of burdens ourselves and learn from them. And that's what turns you into the strong people that you tend to, or that these kind of tragedies turn you into.
yeah,
So it's the voluntary adoption of responsibility.
yeah,
And if you have nothing to strive against and struggle against, then you kind of feel pointless and useless. And there's a lot of people that just want to fight just to fight. It's like, because I've gone through something, I need to fight something.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's an outlet almost.
Yeah. Well, life is unfair. Well, of course it is. It's a silly statement to say, life,
It
but
is, yeah.
but it shouldn't be unfair. We need to make it equal, and it's like, okay, well, how are you going to do that? Well, we'll do all these things, yeah, but then you take away the freedoms of these people. Yeah, well, they're mean and evil and bad. It's like, what makes them mean and evil and bad? What makes your way so much better than the other way?
Yeah,
This is the thing about communism, which is just freaking ridiculous, because they say communism is, because it's having a resurgence where they're saying that communism is good because it's about the people. It's like, okay, point to any nation that had communism. I'll go ahead. Russia. Was that good? No. Okay. How many people died? Millions, 20, 30 million, something like that. Okay. What about China? Oh, well, something like 80 million in Mao's China died. Okay. What about Cambodia? Well, another few million there. What about Venezuela now? Poverty, hundreds of thousands of deaths, if not millions of deaths. You can't point to a single communist. Cuba. You can't point to a single
yeah,
socialist society that has ever worked, but these people think that, oh well, I would do it different because what? You think you're smarter than all these other people that tried it? The only way to be fully equal is to have nothing.
yeah. No, that's
But
true.
at least, yeah.
That's true.
And
And
the
there
way
also
like
has to be
we have.
no power structure within your community.
No, but this is the thing though. No matter what you do, hierarchies exist.
Yeah,
Power structures always exist. It's
yeah.
it's a universal
So you
truth.
can never have equality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's always going to be something. Like if you even look at stars, there's going to be galaxies that are bigger than other galaxies. And how is that fair that they're bigger than other ones? It's like, well, unfortunately, that's just the way it happens.
yeah. So I guess we'll end on that. That wasn't really particularly about sleep, but I mean,
Yeah, well, I was talking about why I couldn't sleep. As you can see, I have a lot of stuff going around my head.
there we go.
Yeah.
We give an example of things that prevent you from sleeping.
Yeah, and prevents you from having meaningful discussions. Like that last bit kind of fell off the
Yeah,
top of my head real quick. So it's clearly what I've been thinking about.
yeah. Since so like that even shows thought process because you were struggling at the start. You're like, oh, I wanted to wait, and then it's like existentialism and all this other stuff, and you're like, let's go,
I've been thinking about this for a
communism,
couple
let's
months
go.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah. We can have another
yeah,
topic on that. We could do that as a mental health thing.
yeah,
Um, talking about the voluntary adoption of responsibility and things like that, and a good way to tie that into jiu-jitsu, about, because that's an adoption of responsibility, especially with you and me volunteering as coaches and stuff.
yeah. Well, I guess that'll do us for now on sleep. We'll maybe revisit it in a few weeks, see how it's going
Yeah, see how it's going
and
for
stuff.
you, and then
Yeah,
we'll see if I can get my sleep quality back to the way I want it to be.
yeah. Baby steps.
Baby
Baby
steps.
steps. Yeah.
If you have any questions, please feel free to comment. I've noticed that a few people have been watching our stuff and have been commenting on Facebook, but please feel free. If you have any questions, it'll help us inform our future topics to better cater it to you, lovely listeners.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, like we've said before, if anyone has any questions they want us to maybe think about or suggestions for a topic, we're more than happy to cover them, provided they're within what we're trying to aim for here, which
Yeah.
is just inclusive of all health and fitness.
Yeah.
So, and by the talks we're having at the end here, we might just become mindset coaches or something.
Yeah. Well, discipline is a part of that. So
It is, yeah.
yeah.
So, that's us for now. I actually think that was an hour. I think we've
Yeah, it's
went
an hour.
over. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for watching or listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Yeah. Ciao for now.
Bye. Peace.
Bye.